Long, long ago, there was a boy who once dreamed of one day becoming a Pokemon trainer. He once woke up and saw his very first Pokemon battle, and ever since that day, he strived to become one of the greatest trainers who ever lived. This story has many kinds of chapters. One of a Pokemon who was created by the human hand, one of a region corrupted by an evil organization, and finally, one of a boy who went on to complete the world's first Pokedex by catching every Pokemon known to man. Or at least, that's how the story's supposed to go. My name is Pokey, and I will be your guide through the chapters of this story. Welcome to the world of... So our story begins with a boy named Red. Now Red wasn't your typical Pokemon trainer. In fact, he wasn't even a trainer at all. He was actually late getting to Professor Oak's lab, but once he got there, he got his very first starter. Now, this is where the story begins to split. You see, the Red and Blue story is separated into three different versions, one of which is the games, the other is the Origins anime, and last but not least the Red and Blue manga. So in this video, we will try and cover bits and pieces of each story to try and connect one another and create an original story of Kanto without tarnishing the original work and retaining the important details. So, here it goes. After choosing a Charmander as Red's first starter, his rival Blue decided to choose Squirtle, and now Professor Oak hands them 2 Pokedexes and have them complete the task of one day recording every Pokemon the world has to offer, and that was it. Their journey officially began. Now across the Kanto region, Red actually managed to catch many different Pokemon in hopes of becoming a better trainer than his rival Blue. Blue was always a better trainer than him, so he hoped one day that he could even surpass him. But in order to do that, he needed to at least complete his gym challenges. But before we get into that, we first need to talk about the issues Red faces throughout his journey, and the corruption of the Kanto region. The corruption in question is the rise of the organization known as Team Rocket. You see, Team Rocket's motives is basically the complete dominance of both the Kanto region and the Pokemon residing in the Kanto region. Giovanni, the leader of the entire Team Rocket organization, basically just wants all the money in Kanto. Their team is essentially the Mafia. Now, although some might believe Team Rocket isn't that smart or strong, those people are severely mistaken. After all, Team Rocket's biggest achievement wasn't stealing a special Pokemon, but rather making one themselves. And this is where we lead ourselves into one of the biggest pieces of the history of the Kanto region, the creation of what was thought to be the strongest Pokemon of its time, Mewtwo. Now, the creation of Mewtwo wasn't pretty. He was made up of cells from a special Pokemon only of which a few have seen, which is Mew. Mew is a Pokemon that had the DNA structure of every single Pokemon, and because of that, Team Rocket sought to one day create their own version of Mew in the form of Mewtwo, created from Mew's cells. Each attempt at making this perfect Pokemon, however, didn't end well. There were many failed attempts in the form of a Pokemon named Ditto, and Ditto wasn't perfect. Get it? Because they were trying to create the perfect Pokemon. I'll shut up now, I'm sorry. But eventually, with the help of their best scientist, Dr. Blaine, they eventually made a copy worth all of that hard work. But the result, however, was the complete destruction of the entire scientific base. After completing his gym challenge, Blue was finally able to take down all Elite Four members and sat down on his throne, of which he would be crowned the Kanto region's champion. But of course, it wouldn't be that easy for our good pal Blue, because as both of their fates were intertwined, Red was there to settle the score with his best friend. It was time to crown the official champion of the Kanto region. Battle began. Red was the victor, and he was crowned the new Kanto champion. But after all, Red's story didn't end there. After Red became champion, he later found his friend Blue severely injured from a fatal attack coming from a certain special Pokemon, a Pokemon that by now should sound very familiar. But before we go into what happens next, we have to go back in time a little, to what happened after the giant explosion that took place in Team Rocket's lab. You see, after the creation of Mewtwo, Team Rocket began expanding its influence to other parts of Kanto, mainly within Saffron City, but luckily with the help of Red and Blue both beating Giovanni at his very own gym, on top of the fact Team Rocket was under investigation by Looker and his team of agents, Team Rocket had their back against the wall. And what didn't help was the person who was the main brain behind all of Team Rocket, including their experiment on Mewtwo, Dr. Blaine, left Team Rocket entirely. Team Rocket had no choice but to disband. For now. Now back to the present. After Red heard about Blue's injuries, it was found out between him and Professor Oak that Blue went to Cerulean Cave to fight and hopefully capture the world's strongest Pokemon, Mewtwo. But Blue failed. He had to escape to take refuge in Oak's lab. Red was angered to see his best friend like this, and in turn wanted to capture and beat Mewtwo himself, not just to complete the world's first Pokedex, but to stop incidents like this to ever occur, to take his journey one step further into becoming one of the best trainers who ever lived. This was his final test. After a discussion with Professor Oak, Red set off to Cerulean Cave, and after a while, it was right there in front of him. The biggest challenge he's ever had to face, to not only catch, but to beat the world's strongest Pokemon. There were only 2 words etched into Red's mind during that moment, and it was safe to say Mewtwo knew them as well. Battle begin. Red and Charizard tried their hardest, but just couldn't close the gap between them and Mewtwo. On top of Mewtwo's control over telekinesis, they were just severely outmatched. Unfortunately for Red and Charizard, they were approaching the end of their journey.
So, Professor, what kind of evolution are you researching?
Well, if I told you that Pokemon may have an additional evolutionary stage, what would you say?
Are you serious?
There have been several reports about different Pokemon evolving in a way that we researchers refer to as Mega Evolution.
Mega evolution?
Nobody could believe it. Red actually did it. He not only beat the strongest Pokemon at one point, but actually managed to catch it and finally complete the first ever Pokedex. Red's story was officially complete. And this story of Kanto was finally complete. But wait, did you notice I said this story of Kanto was complete? Well, that's because this story has more tales to tell. But in order to tell them, we have to actually change time. To a time where not everything was the same. A time of change. In fact, let's rewind this entire video, as if the video was completely different. That should make things more fun, right? Well, it's time to change. Let's go back to a different time. To a different Kanto. Long, long ago, there was a girl who once wanted to become a Pokemon Master, to one day become the best champion in Kanto history. Even more so than the legendary Pokemon trainers who crawled their way up to the top. And now, it was time for Elaine to do the same. Now Elaine was a prodigy, smashing every single gym with little effort. Not only that, but even facing down a villainous organization named Team Rocket wasn't a struggle for her. And even when faced against one of the legendary trainers that triumphed over Kanto, Elaine still came out on top, and managed to take on the league. Just like the gym challenge, she smashed through the Elite Four, and the person standing in front of her was none other than her rival Trace, who she beat effortlessly. And she became Kanto's new champion. Trace, her rival, was furious and wanted to find a Pokemon so powerful that not even Elaine could beat. And so, with a little information from Professor Oak, headed off to Cerulean Cave, where he would find the strongest Pokemon of its time, Mewtwo. But what Trace didn't know was that a mysterious trainer was following him, with the same intention to catch Mewtwo. But unfortunately for Trace, this wasn't the average trainer, but instead the second legendary trainer of the Kanto region. Green. But even with Trace having that head start, he couldn't catch up with Green. And Trace told Green that she wasn't alone in this cave. A trainer much stronger than he was. Well, you know who it is. Green finally made it to the endpoint, but she stood in front of a single trainer who managed to catch Mewtwo herself. That trainer was Elaine. Out of pure spite, there were 2 words etched into Green's mind, and Elaine likely knew those words as well, and they knew it was time. Battle begin. Now Elaine's team was severely injured from their battle with Mewtwo, and her Pikachu as well as the rest of her team tried their hardest to fight Green's. But she was too strong. She was different. She felt almost more powerful than him. Elaine was shown one of the most powerful trainers she's ever went up against. This was it.
Show me what I came for! Show
hold it back, just let it go. The prison clutch is incredible. With each battle strength goes fierce and bright. Through countless trails and fortune, now I feel ready. Don't forget you gotta stay. You're fighting with me. We found a way. What will you do? You'll die, but together we will rise to the top.
That's right. Elaine alongside Mewtwo were able to beat the second legendary trainer of Kanto, and she not only did that, but managed to catch the final Pokemon left in the Pokedex. Her journey was complete. But right towards the end of her story, she found a mysterious trainer, one who seemed like he saw it all. But for some reason, Elaine saw his eyes and knew what he was thinking, and Elaine was thinking the same. She knew who this trainer was, and she never even met him. But only through battle could trainers truly understand one another. And that's when they both shouted out the two iconic words, "Battle, begin."